Welcome back to Next Shift with Rick Wagan. Suzuki doesn't suck. I have Stephen Cohen, my guest tonight, and this is the post-game show after the Montreal Canadiens lose in a shootout to the Chicago Blackhawks. They gain a point. They're at 89 points. They're in a playoff spot right now, 4 points ahead of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus has 2 games remaining. The Canadiens have won against the Carolina Hurricanes on Wednesday. Unfortunately, they weren't able to close it out and actually lock a playoff spot. It's been a rough 3 games now. They've lost 3 games in a row, 2 of them in overtime. And now we're looking at a final game for the Montreal Canadiens or a final loss by the Columbus Blue Jackets on Tuesday or Thursday for the Canadiens to get into the playoffs. Ivan Demidov started his NHL career tonight. In his first 2 shifts, he made an incredible assist to set up Newhook in front of the net for a goal. The crowd went crazy. And then in his second shift, he got a puck off the boards, the semi-breakaway. I guess it was a full breakaway. Made a great move on the goaltender and finished it off with a beautiful goal to make it 2-0. The Canadiens took a 2-0 lead, and then penalty by Gooley led to a power play goal that turned the tides to make it 2-1. And the Chicago Blackhawks took a 3-2 lead going into the last few minutes, where it was actually Slafkovski, I think, that ended up scoring off of his foot. I don't know who actually got the goal. I'll have to look at it, but it was a great assist by Hudson, assisted by Cole Caulfield, who took a shot towards the net and scored, but it looked like it also went off Slafkovski's foot to go in. They went to an overtime, did not score, and then went to a shootout. And there was one of the weirdest shootouts I've ever seen, where Frank Nazar kind of lost the puck, made it backhand. No one saw where the puck went. The referee didn't call it a goal. And then even before they called it a goal, they brought in Patrick Laine to shoot. Patrick Laine missed his shot, and after Patrick Laine missed his shot, they called it a goal, which was a really weird kind of outcome. They didn't score on their third chance, so they didn't start over or anything like that. It was a weird. I don't think there's been a rule like that. I don't even know how to count this one. And then Suzuki had his chance, made a nice move, went off the goalie's pad, off the crossbar, almost off his back and in, but it never went in, and the Canadiens ended up losing the game. So all in all, it was a difficult night for the Montreal Canadiens. It was a great game for Ivan Demidov. He definitely looks like a generational talent as a young 19-year-old. However, most of the Canadiens didn't have their best game tonight. And I'd love your take, Stephen, on what you're thinking and what you want to talk about.
Yeah, a little disappointing. We're still in it. We got a point tonight, so we're inching closer to the playoffs. Columbus still has a large mountain to climb. They've got to win 2 games in regulation, if I'm not mistaken, to get into the playoffs. So they come into the third period and the score is tied with 3 minutes left in the game. If they go into an overtime or into a shootout, they're out if they don't score. So they may have to pull their goalie, which is like the weirdest thing in regulation time, to kind of stave off elimination on their side. So let's talk a little bit about Demidov. So listen, he is no question about it. You can see his skating skills. He reminds me a lot of Lane Hudson with his moves, his vision. He's very creative with the puck. He's got speed. He skates a lot like Lane Hudson, with the shiftiness. It's super exciting to have this player on our team. Now, listen, it was good and it was bad for Demidov tonight, and he's young, so he's 19 years old. The goal that the Blackhawks scored to go up 3-2 was completely his fault. I watched the replay like 5 times, and what I don't understand is you're a young kid, you're 19 years old, and you get caught, right? Why aren't you skating hard back? I looked at it, over and over again, and he was just coasting back. So I think the Canadiens, the coaching staff really need to explain to him that it's not all offense. Hockey is a 2-way game. I think that if he would have, put a little bit more effort, listen, I'm not saying it wouldn't have been a goal, and I'm not completely blaming him, but his hustle on the back check was not good. So it was good. Don't get me wrong. I was super excited. He scored a goal, got an assist. You see Lane Hudson was hustling back as fast as he could, and Demidov is just coasting. You could see it in the replay. He's literally just watching the play. So that was a little disappointing. No question, the Canadiens made it a game. They came back. They tied the game up. It was a little bit of luck, and the puck did bounce off of Slafkovski's toe and rolled into the net. But at the same time, we had so many chances, and their goalie just stood on his head. I mean, Demidov had at least 2 or 3 point blank shots. Caulfield had a chance. Suzuki earlier missed an open net. You know, he had the puck just squirt to him on the side. He could have buried one. Listen, it's hockey. These are the most dangerous teams to play. So you have a Blackhawks team that pretty much they're sealed in their spot of the second to last spot in the standings, so they can't go up or down. You got young guys that want to have fun and play hockey. They're very talented. I mean, you know, Nazar and Connor Bedard and all of these young players on that team are very talented. They may not be very good defensively, but offensively, when they're on the power play, they're it's like pond hockey, you know, the way they're playing. So it's if you take a dumb penalty, which the Canadiens did twice today, like the Goulet penalty, where he crushed their player, was definitely a penalty. He deserved it. And if you take stupid penalties in the playoffs, the other teams are going to make you pay. And lesson learned for us. We took a couple of penalties that we really shouldn't have against a team that's very good on the power play, and we paid for it. So all in all, listen, we got a point out of the game. This is a dangerous team. Columbus is playing 2 dangerous teams. Tomorrow night, I've been watching Philadelphia play. Philadelphia has a new, a interim coach, and the interim coach, he wants a job in the NHL, and he's got his players motivated to play. It's not going to be an easy ride for Columbus tomorrow night. I promise you that game is going to be a tough game for them. So let's see what happens. I'm still confident. And last point I want to make is good and bad to play Carolina in our last game of the season. One, Carolina is locked into their spot. So I think, and they're playing a back-to-back, the front end of the back-to-back. So I don't know how much they're probably going to rest some of their players in one part of the back-to-back and then the second part of their back-to-back. They're playing on the road. So I would think that they would want their players to play at home, not rest at home. So I'm guessing that the easier game if the Canadiens had to play them, whether it's their last game or their second to last game, or the last game or the second to last game, would be the one on the road. The bad news is that Carolina and the Canadiens, as you know, have history. I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina wouldn't want to just stick it to the Canadiens, you know, because of all of the, you know, the free agency shenanigans that have gone on in the past. So Carolina, I think it's gonna be interesting, definitely, if the game means something. Meaning, like, obviously, if tomorrow Columbus ties or wins in overtime or in a shootout or loses, they're out. So the game means nothing. So, you know, that's my take on the whole situation. I'm a little bit, you know, disappointed, but I'm excited for the next, I'm excited to see the next 3 games, actually. Every game is like a playoff game. So,
yeah, listen, you said a lot there, so I'll kind of tackle a couple of things that I heard. Yeah, I agree with you that Demidov did not backcheck the way he needs to in a playoff type atmosphere or just at an NHL level. He's 19 years old. It's his first game. I think he made a mistake on the shot that he attempted. It was blocked. Goulet was actually the defenseman that got caught, and Hudson was already back. It was kind of a 2-on-1 on Hudson after Demidov didn't backcheck. It was Goulet that was chasing his ass back to try to get to it, and he just didn't get there. Definitely a mistake, defensive mistake. Not only the shot, but also the backcheck was it's unacceptable. He needs to learn that. But like you said, the coaches will point that out, and he'll not do that again. And I actually saw later in the game, there was another chance where he had to backcheck and he backed his ass off.
Yes,
so,
he did.
So I think it's going to be, that's what I kind of, said. He's learning on the go in the biggest game of the year. To your point also, Demidov had some chances, but he set up Newhook with a couple empty nets on the side. There was a couple of guys that just had open shots that couldn't put the puck in the net. The Canadiens didn't play the greatest of games. I thought the line of Gallagher, Anderson, and Dvorak had a very porous game. I didn't think Dvorak played very well. I didn't think Anderson had his legs. Even Gallagher didn't look the normal Gallagher Gallagher style. There was two other lines that were kind of interchangeable. I thought Patrick Laine was terrible tonight. I thought that was one of his worst games I've seen him play. I thought Gooley didn't play the greatest of games. And Hudson, he made a great assist, but he wasn't as great as he's been. And not that it's his fault or anything, but there was a lot of guys that were obviously holding their sticks really tight, in my opinion, and they were nervous. And I think they're a young team and they're learning. So all in all, I agree with almost everything else you said. What I'll say about the games that they're playing, obviously I agree with you that the Philadelphia Flyers are going to try everything they can to stop Columbus. They're their rival team in their league. They're playing solid hockey. That's going to be the game that's really important. I'm less optimistic about the Islanders. The Islanders have really shut it down. They've not played really good hockey in the last few weeks. And I don't, if Columbus wins the game on Tuesday and the Canadiens don't win on Wednesday, it's going to be a very, very difficult game for Montreal Canadiens fans to watch Columbus play the Islanders on Thursday. What I will say, the only other, it's a small mistake, but the only other thing is I believe the game for Columbus is in Ottawa, so they're back-to-back on the road.
They're not playing Ottawa.
Yeah, they're playing, sorry, not Columbus, Carolina. Carolina is playing Ottawa on Thursday. So
that's right. So it's two road games. That's right.
It's two road games. That's the only thing you said wrong. And I said Columbus for some reason. What could happen, like you're saying, is I think they might rest a couple of players in both games, right? Like they might start their backup goalie one and maybe a couple players won't play. And then the next game, a couple players won't play. It would be a devastating if we lose that game to Kotkaniemi scoring the game winner. That would suck.
I don't want to.
But I think at the end of the day, the Montreal Canadiens have the destiny in their hands. They're in the mix. They can hope that Philadelphia does what they have to do. But if not, the Montreal Canadiens have to play a playoff game. It's game 7 of a playoff series, and they win, they're in. They lose, they're out. It's kind of what you have to expect potentially. Let's watch the game tomorrow night with Columbus, see what they could do. I think it's in Philadelphia. So, if they win that game and they win out, they deserve it. The only other bad, I guess you can say, is if you believe in fate and you believe in other things, Johnny Gaudreau, maybe he's pulling some strings up there. We don't want that to happen for Montreal Canadiens, but it's feeling like that those guys have some destiny with them, and hopefully the Montreal Canadiens can shut that down and win. All in all, I thought, like I said, I was always sure that Demidov was going to be a great hockey player in the NHL. It'll be quite interesting to see what happens on Wednesday, whether they change any lines up or they do anything differently or they start different. And I know you're going to go there, start different power play units. There's a lot of different things. He's definitely a talented kid who brings a lot to every shift. He comes out there when he gets the puck on the offensive side of the zone. It's unbelievable what he can bring to the game. And I don't think it's energy or first game things. This kid is a special player. I've watched him. I live out here on the West Coast. I wake up 7, 8 in the morning, put on my on hockey TV, watch the Scott St. Petersburg games. I probably watched 20 to 25 of his games. It's no different. He's just an unbelievable talent. The only reason why he didn't get as many points as he will in the NHL is because he just didn't get the ice time. I think he got 14 or 15 minutes tonight. I don't think he got that, most of the season in Russia. They just don't play 18, 19-year-old kids the same way that the NHL does. Yeah. So all in all, it was a interesting game. I thought a lot of the players that needed to play well didn't come out and play a great game, and that's disappointing. But I think it's not because they didn't try. I think they tried hard. I just think they didn't have. They were holding their sticks. They were nervous, and that's
not in the first period. Not in the first period. They came out flying. They came out hitting. They jumped off to a 2-0, lead. I just don't understand what was the point of Goulet taking that kind of penalty when you're up 2-0. Why don't you just sit back? Don't take any stupid penalties. Just don't take any penalties whatsoever. And I think that penalty changed the whole momentum of the game. Up until that penalty, and it was deep into the first period. I think it was 17 minutes gone by, and then he took that penalty.
I'm going to stop you there. I want to stop you because that was 1 second early and if the guy would have touched the puck, it would have been a fine hit. Okay. And that wouldn't have been called. So and
that was a hit. And you even said
you liked it when it happened.
I did. But then I thought about it. And then,
there's going to be penalties. And you also said there was dumb penalties, but Carrier's penalty wasn't a dumb penalty. He was beat, and he had to stop the guy, or else it would have been a chance at the net. So at the end of the day, that penalty although you can call it a dumb penalty, he was trying to set the tone. He thought, let's get a big hit. We're winning 2-0. It was early. The guy never touched the puck. You can't blame this on Gooley all by himself. It was a team loss. The team didn't really come out. I thought Montembeault played a great game. I don't think it was his fault. I think there was a lot of good in that game from the Montreal Canadiens, but there was a lot of bad. And what I did also see was this, like you said, it's a young team in Chicago that has a lot of talent, that had nothing to lose. And they came off, they just played Winnipeg and they went into overtime against Winnipeg too. They lost, I think, in a shootout or something like that, or maybe in OT, but they're not, even though they're the second to last team in the NHL, they're not terrible right now. And they're trying their best to win their last few games, and they're getting more experience. And so obviously the Canadiens had stress and nerves and want to win. They got an important point because, like you said, now Columbus has to win out, not in regulation. The Canadiens have the control of their destiny in their hands. They can win the game against Carolina. 2 games ago, they won 4-0 against Carolina. They're not that they're not that bad against that team overall. I know they lost badly the next game, but that was in their 5-game losing streak. They need to turn it on. They need a switch. They need that switch on. Last game of the year for them, and it's going to be game 82, which you can't ask for much more than being in the mix, but being in game 82 and have a chance to make the playoffs.
The point we got tonight is going to be the difference. Mark my words. The point we got tonight is such a difference than not getting any points at all, because Columbus having to win 2 games in regulation versus one of the games in regulation and one in overtime is huge. I mean, they are also going to be tense. Like playing, if they're tied and it's going into the third period, they're going to start to press, take chances. I think this is, thank goodness we got that point. It makes me feel a lot more comfortable. I actually think we're going to make the playoffs now because of this point. And I think that Columbus is going to have a tough time. I really do. Hockey is not so easy to win in regulation. I was looking through the stats. I think they've gone into overtime, if I'm not mistaken, 16 or 17 times this season. That's a lot. Think about that. So, and Philadelphia's, their players are going to want to it's the coach also. The coach, this is his opportunity for him to actually, and they've been doing well. He's going to be considered to be the full-time coach, at least to start the season next season, if he does well. So, this is a good test for him. I think he's going to have his team ready to play. Let me just make one more comment about goaltending. You mentioned that, Monty played well today. Yes and no, okay? This is a playoff hockey game. This effort tonight, and including the overtime, is not going to cut it for winning in the playoffs, okay? He was okay today, okay? The second goal, I don't care what anybody says, the second goal and the third goal, it was just weak goaltending, and then in the overtime, he needs to win that game for the Canadiens. He needs to play better. I give him a 7 out of 10. And our goaltending needs to be 9 or 10 out of 10. And so I would give him, yes, he made a couple of really nice stops. He let in a couple of weak goals as far as I'm concerned. Dobe's, and listen, I'm definitely not going on the show and saying that Dobe should start against Carolina, no question. But Dobe's played better against Toronto than Monty played tonight against Chicago. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, so the goals were not his fault. None of them. I don't care what you say. They were the breakaway.
I'm not blaming him. He needs to play better.
So you can't say he didn't play well. He made some outstanding saves. He made 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and you said overtime. He made 3 or 4 right at the last second. That the guy had a shot from in the hash marks, and he made a save with 1 second left. He made some key saves that kept the team in the game. The shootout is a shootout. I don't look at goaltending to win in the playoffs about shootouts. That's BS. And at the end of the day, Monty wasn't the reason they lost this game at all. He played a great game, and I don't think any goaltender could stop those 3 shots every time. So, and he made some stops that he could have.
You're looking at it that he wasn't the reason we lost. I'm looking at it like, yeah, he wasn't the culprit, but he could have been the hero if he played a little bit better, and he didn't. So he's okay, but when you want to win in the playoffs and you want to win the Stanley Cup, right? You need above average goaltending And Monty, listen, he's showing me every day now. Like there's just something missing there. You know, he's okay, and he's a little bit above average. And yes, he has the occasional good game, but you need to be consistent. And when your team needs you, like Bennington, when your team needs you, and you need to have your goalie step up and win the game for you, he's there. And listen, Dobes, right? You can't blame Dobes the way he played against Toronto, who's a much better team than, on the road, going into a hostile Toronto rivalry
Uh,
matchup, and
uh,
he played phenomenal. I mean, the guy
no,
was just
we're not.
ridiculous.
I don't think anyone's blaming Dobes. You're blaming Montembeault. I just think it's not. It's not fair, in my opinion. There's so many players that played so much worse than Montembeault
I'm
today.
not blaming him.
And the
I'm not
goals were
blaming
goals. I
him.
mean, they were all, the breakaway
Look,
goal was point blank. The other two
I'm
goals were shots that he had no chance on,
agreed.
top shelf, hit the cross, hit an in. Those are unstoppable shots by almost any goalie.
So let's
And he
look at
made
it like
some
this.
pretty
Let's
saves.
look at it. Let's look at it from this point of view, right, Rick? We talked about this as like, even if they don't make the playoffs, this is a learning experience for a very young team, right? I'm learning something about Monty. Monty, this is his test, right? This game and the next game are his test. He needs to step up his game and win the game for them. If he doesn't do it, you can say all you want. Oh, he didn't win. He didn't lose the game for us. He didn't win the game for us. So as far as I'm concerned, right, he's not the future for us. So I'm going to reserve judgment because he has one more game, if it matters, right? It may not matter. So we'll see, and then we'll go to the playoffs. But, this is listen, it's a good thing that these games are like playoff atmosphere and they're playoff like. If the game means something against Carolina at home and he doesn't play over better, not average and not okay. Like I'm talking about, like, he's not the reason, like you can't even, there's no doubt that he needs to be a star, one of the top 3 stars of the game. If he's not, then as far as I'm concerned, he is not the future for the Canadians. He's had enough time to prove himself. So Jacob Fowler's coming up. I would literally cut bait on Monty for next year. I'm not saying that right now. I'm just saying that this is a very good test over the next couple. I'm learning a lot about Monty.
Yeah.
So
I know. Well, I mean, listen, the last time we spoke, you were praising him, and he won a lot of games in a row. I think it
yeah,
was 6 games in a row that they won with him in nets, 5 of them, I believe, and he played some outstanding hockey and he won the game. And tonight, none of the goals were his fault, and the Canadiens played awful in a lot of the second half of the game. So, listen, I'm not suggesting that Montembeault is a top 5 goalie in the NHL that's going to win a Stanley Cup for you. I've watched Jacob Fowler in the AHL his first game. He had a great game, but again, I think he has some seasoning to do. He's not ready for prime time to be that player yet either. He's young, and so he's a good 2-3 years before he's going to be a star goalie that could be take over a whole series or multiple games. Not saying he's not good. I'm not saying he can't play well. Listen, let's see what happens on Wednesday. We might be singing a different tune if it's a 2-1 victory for the Montreal Canadiens and Montembeault stands on his head. They probably need to goalie the other team and win the game. I agree, and that has to happen. And like you said, Dobas did do that in Toronto. He played an outstanding game. That's the type of game you need. He's not going to start Wednesday for sure. If
no, I
if
agree.
they
And
get into the playoffs,
if I was the coach,
yeah.
if I was the coach, I'm not starting Dobes. I'm starting Monty. But
Yeah, you give him a chance. You give him his chance. It's a test.
this is
I
his
agree. I mean,
opportunity.
it's
So
an
let's see.
opportunity. I wouldn't cut bait with him if he doesn't win the game, but I would give him the opportunity. And again, this team is going to be a lot better next year, and it's going to have a different team. There's going to be a bunch of different players next year that are going to bring a different momentum. And Monty's not the problem, I don't think. Short term, I think. Listen, next year it's going to be Monty and Dobish to start most likely, and we'll see what happens. Like in the playoffs, if Monty doesn't play great in 1 or 2 games, Dobish will get a shot. Maybe he'll be that kind of goalie that comes in the playoffs and is a gamer. Listen, I'm not a big fan of Dobish's style totally, but I think he's a gamer, and when he plays well, he's unbelievable. And he had a really, really strong game against Toronto. I wish he would have stopped Marner's shot. That
Was a
could have
tough
been
shot to
saved.
stop.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of tough shots to stop. There was 3 tonight. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same idea, right? If he would have stopped that shot, the Canadiens would have had a chance to win in overtime and win the game. I'm not pretending to say it's his fault. It wasn't. They wouldn't have been there without him. But that's what I'm trying to say. It's a tough sport. It's a tough.
Yeah, it's a tough. No one said it's easy, and I'll say this. Listen, for the record, I'm not cutting bait right now on Monty. He has an opportunity to come on Wednesday and play exceptionally good hockey. There's no tomorrow. He has to play. If he has to win that game, he needs to be not Monty, the average goalie from tonight. He needs to be the goalie that was chosen for the Four Nations Cup and why they chose him. He needs to show why he was a top three goalie for Canada, and I want to see it. I want to see him do it. I'm
I mean,
challenging him.
we've seen a lot of it. So let me talk a little controversy here. And I've been one of the biggest supporters of Martin St. Louis. I think he's a great coach. I think he's done some incredible things with this young team. However, I was very, very disappointed with his choice of shooters in the shootout. I thought that this was the type of game that Demidov. You know, if you look at what happened with Chicago, they started with Nazar. Nazar was hot tonight. He got the goal and they won. I would have put Demidov either first or third, and I would have not shot with line A. I would have had Suzuki and or Caulfield and Demidov, because I think that was a miss. I think that was a big miss. Even if he didn't score, he would have the opportunity to. I don't care how much pressure it is on the kid. I'm not saying he would have scored, but I think that's something they should have tried. He was hot, and he had that special mojo with him tonight, and I think it would have been really interesting to see him shoot first and see if he can set the momentum. The crowd would have went crazy. The other team would have been stressed out. And if he doesn't score, they still have a lot of chances, right? So at the end of the day, I think that was a miss by the coach.
I agree. I fully agree with you. I was going to make that comment earlier. I don't know what to tell you. I don't understand where Liney had a terrible game. He was lazy. He looked like he wasn't hustling. He didn't even you got to give guys who deserve to win the game on.
It's a young coach. It's a young coach. He's learning too.
So he's learning too. I would have definitely. I'm not against Cole Caulfield going first. I probably would have, and I would not have put Demidov going third. That's too much pressure on the kid. But it would have probably been just a pretty simple replacement: Cole Caulfield, Demidov, and Suzuki. And Suzuki almost scored. Suzuki made a tremendous move. He deked the crap out of the goalie, and then he lifted it. He beat him. And it deflected. It didn't go off the crossbar, by the way. If you look at the replay, it went off the goalpost, then hit the back of the goalie, went up in the air, came down. It could have hit his back and went in. He had no idea where the puck was, and it just didn't. So, it was a great play.
I'm pretty sure I saw a crossbar, but we'll take a replay.
Okay.
I'll take a look later. I don't think it matters. It didn't go in the net. The Canadiens ended up losing, but they got a point. I'm not optimistic about that point mattering. However, I am optimistic that the Canadiens have another game. I'm just not.
I don't agree. Columbus. I don't agree with you.
I think Columbus has been playing some incredible hockey right now. They have a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Again, mojo, or they have that spirit of Johnny Gaudreau, and they're trying to win for a guy that died tragically in the beginning of the season. They're playing really, really good hockey. I would not be surprised if Columbus wins their last two games. That doesn't mean I don't think the Montreal Canadiens can't beat the Carolina Hurricanes. So I'm thinking that there's still a point to be needed by the Montreal Canadiens. I'm hopeful and excited for Wednesday. Hey, listen, if we don't make the playoffs, we played 82 games, and the Aiken game matters. And if we do make the playoffs, and I hope they do, and I wish they do, and I think they will, then we get at least 4 to 7 to more games with watching this team play hockey this year, and a lot more exciting and a lot better than the last 2 or 3 seasons of the Montreal Canadiens for sure. So, anything else you want to talk about?
Let me just say this. This is my prediction.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree. That point you're going to see. It's going to come down to the point, and it probably will be all done tomorrow. I don't think the Carolina game is going to matter. I think Columbus wins tomorrow in overtime. I think they're going to have to pull their goalie and press, and they're not going to score, and the other team's not going to score, and it's going to go into overtime. And then, it's going to be the funniest, it's going to be the most ironic ending that you can ever imagine in sports, because a team that had to win is going to end up probably winning in overtime or in the shootout. And they're going to have pulled their goalie to try to win in regulation, and it's not going to happen. Nor will the other team score, and it's just going to end in a tie. And the Canadiens are going to end up going to the playoffs because of a tiebreak. Yeah,
All right, so we'll stick with
that's it.
that
That's it.
prediction, and maybe we'll have a show tomorrow night if that prediction doesn't come true. If there's a game on Wednesday, if that doesn't come true, what do you have going? What do you think's going to happen on Wednesday? Any
Yeah,
predictions
because I'm
there?
not predicting the game. If
Okay,
the game means nothing on Wednesday,
it doesn't matter.
then it really doesn't matter. Then I mean, they're resting all their players. They're beat up, right? If the game matters and Columbus wins in regulation, the Canadians will win on Wednesday. Actually, you know what? I think the Canadians end up probably going into overtime, and it doesn't matter. They don't need to win. So once the game goes into overtime, they can win, lose. They can play Savard, all their slowest players in overtime just for fun,
Yeah,
just to give them, an opportunity. Maybe even let the goalie play up.
there you go.
It
There you
doesn't
go.
really matter, right? But I predict that the game's going to go into overtime. This is what's going to probably happen. It's going to probably be like 1-1 or 2-2. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game, and the Canadians are going to shut down, meaning that they're just going to dump and just play for a tie. And because that's all they need. That's why, Rick, is so important. This point is huge because if you go into the game and it's in the third period and the game's tied, as a coach, you can literally play 3 or 4 guys back, play back on your heels, and just play defensive hockey to play for a tie. I'm not in the beginning of the third period, but at least deep into the third period, don't need to press, don't need to take any chances, don't need to take stupid penalties, and just basically play more conservative hockey, which is kind of what they did, by the way, in Toronto. So
Yeah,
that's my
we'll
prediction.
see. You have a lot of predictions there. We'll see. The other team's not going to be playing defensive hockey, and they're going to be pressing. And I don't like that style personally. But again, if they play a smart hockey game, they'll win the game. I don't think it matters whether they win or they go into overtime. I'm not disappointed. I was excited to see Demidov the way he's playing. I think it'll be better in the next game. I think, like you said, Carolina's not going to have a lot to win. The Canadians will do what they can to win the game, and it's a big test, like you said. If they have Montembeault standing on his head and they have Demidov playing some good hockey and their first line can play a little bit better and get some pucks in the net, then they're gonna win. So I'm still on the fence in terms of Montreal Canadiens. I think they're gonna make the playoffs, but it's gonna be interesting. We'll see what happens. Anything else?
No.
All right. So that's it, I guess, for tonight. Exciting finish to the season. Montreal Canadiens lose the game in overtime in a shootout. They're off to play against Carolina on Wednesday. That's it for next shift. Suzuki does not suck. Talk to you guys soon.